What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I got Nick Morganson here joining the show as we're going to be going over the NBA playoffs, which are tipping off this week. We got some college basketball news. We'll be jumping into a bunch of those things throughout the episode. So, Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's NBA playoff time. It's time to roll. We have a lot of interesting opinions about it, but let's get into the NBA playoffs. I'm ready.
Absolutely. And we got the play-in tournament this week. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff for that. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. We'll be going over the John Calipari news, which broke last week, but it was after the episode premiered. So kind of late news, but we definitely got to touch on that. Mark Pope signing. We got a couple of head coach signings. A couple of head coaches in consideration for the Nets job. Grayson Allen's extension, the play-in tournament, and then, of course, the NBA playoff brackets. But first things first, we wanted to introduce our newest sponsor. This episode is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. The NBA playoffs are here. Starting tonight, we bring you live coverage of the NBA play-in tournament with the Western Conference as LeBron James and the Lakers go on the road to face Brandon Ingram and the Pelicans, followed by Steph Curry and the Warriors going on the road to face De'Aaron Fox and the Kings. Coverage starts tonight at 7:15 p.m., and tomorrow we'll have more coverage via Playback. We bring you live coverage of the Eastern Conference as Jimmy Butler and the Heat go to the City of Brotherly Love to take on Joel Embiid and the Sixers, followed by Trae Young and the Hawks going to Chi-Town to take on DeMar DeRozan and the Bulls. Coverage for that starts tomorrow at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So we got a lot of stuff going on for you guys. The NBA playoffs are here, but first things first, we'll jump into a couple of college basketball topics before we touch on the playoffs. Of course, this is kind of old news now, but I mean, pretty huge news as John Calipari left University of Kentucky for Arkansas. A very, very shocking move that kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, a lot of people somewhat saw it coming, but Calipari left Kentucky after 15 years. He was persuaded by one of his good friends, who's a billionaire, as we were talking about before. For the University of Arkansas, it's a 5-year, $35 million deal, $7 million a year for John Calipari, who's already in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I mean, he's one of the greatest head coaches of all time, 85 and 263 career college record. He was also the head coach of the New Jersey Nets for a few seasons before getting fired. Did not do very well with that, but he's done a fantastic job in Kentucky, and it's an interesting move. He jumps to a new SEC team, and this was something that I don't think a lot of college basketball fans really saw coming.
I mean, I didn't see Calipari going to Arkansas on the bingo card. I definitely didn't. Not even the free space on the bingo card. I didn't even see it on that one. But it's interesting, like you brought up the Nets, and we'll get to the Nets a little bit later too. If I remember correctly, that was a 10-year deal that he signed with the Brooklyn Nets, New Jersey Nets at the time. And people were saying that he was afraid and he ran away from the Nets and ended up going back to college. Yeah. I feel like this has some similarity, except staying on the college level. All right, I'm done. I'm not getting what I want. There's politicking going on at the University of Kentucky. Let me go where I know the Tyson chicken guy who's a billionaire, and he'll pay me, and I can go regain my power at Arkansas. And you know what's going to happen, too, that if I'm not mistaken, he's had the most drafted first-round picks in the NBA since he's entered the college ranks.
Yep.
So what's going to happen is he is one of the best recruiters in the history of college basketball. So anyone who committed to Kentucky is now going to go to Arkansas.
Exactly. And we've already seen a bunch of guys who were on the Kentucky team last year and some incoming freshmen decommit after this news came out. Boogie Fland, who was a top five-star recruit, actually decommitted today. You had a couple guys on the team last year. DJ Wagner entered the transfer portal. Aaron Bradshaw actually just entered the transfer portal and just signed with Ohio State today, which was an interesting move. But besides that, a lot of the guys are leaving Kentucky's team. And they're still leaving Kentucky in the mix because, it's regardless of if John Calipari is there, it's still the University of Kentucky. It's still a historic program. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they do moving forward.
I mean, it was interesting because people were, and I thought this was a terrible comparison when people were making it. People were saying Nick Saban. And I said, there is no way this is Nick Saban. Nick Saban, what does he have? 6 national titles with Alabama? Like, Nick Saban can go do whatever the hell he wants at this point because he's proven himself far and beyond what happened with the Miami Dolphins and embarrassing himself in the NFL. He came back and won 6 times over and proved to be one of the best, or actually I should say the best college football coach in college football history. Calipari, what did he win? 1, I think, or 2?
Yeah, he won 1. And has only made it to a handful of Final Fours. Exactly. Like, if Coach K left Duke, that would be a better comparison to Nick Saban.
Yeah, but I would even say Coach K has had a much better career than Calipari is ever going to have.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And what was the other thing I heard? Oh, the last couple of years hasn't even made it out of the first weekend. First weekend.
And that's a big thing. The last several years have not been good for Kentucky. And they had that 2020-2021 season where they were just absolutely abysmal. They haven't been able to make it out of the first round the last couple of years. The whole bringing in 5-6 5-star recruits just isn't working anymore. It's just not the way that college basketball is run anymore. Everything, you live and you die from the transfer portal nowadays. And
it's like free agency.
It's free agency, and you need upperclassmen in order to win a national championship. You can't win with just these star freshman team. And I think that's what
NILs change everything now because any team could pay anybody millions of dollars and just say, come to my team. I mean, it won't happen because you're still going to get bigger school bias when it comes to a lot of these guys because they want to get to the NBA as quickly as possible. And with a bigger college, they do that. But NILs, it's kind of like what happened in Major League Baseball when they had the, not the salary cap, but when they had the competitive balance tax.
Yep, exactly.
So now the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Dodgers don't get everybody anymore. So now you're seeing more competitive balance.
Yeah, it's a salary cap without making a salary cap, basically, without the strictness of a hard salary cap that you see like in the NFL where you can't re-sign your own players and things like that.
And the most pathetic thing was Oakland, the team they lost to this year. I mean, come on. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't lose that team is, I hate to insult Oakland, but they're like a drop of water in a river. Like, that's how big they are.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think after that loss, a lot of Kentucky fans wanted Calipari gone, and there was a lot of talk about that, and a lot of people just thought like, okay, like they're just overreacting, like obviously Calipari is not going to leave and stuff like that, but those are all things that kind of fueled it too, and I think that their underperformance over the last couple of tournaments have definitely rubbed Kentucky fans the wrong way, and
what was the other upset they had that made the Cinderella run also that beat them? Was it Loyola?
It was Loyola,
right?
I think St. Peter's.
Oh, St. Peter's. Yep. St. Peter's made it all the way to the Final Four. Beat them on the way.
Yep. Beat them in the first round. Kentucky was the 2 seed and St. Peter's was a 15. Beat them in the first round and then made it all the way to the Final Four.
What was Oakland? Was Oakland a 15 or a 14?
Oakland was a 14, I think. I was thinking it was a 3 versus 14 game.
Still bad. Regardless.
It's still terrible. It's still a game that they should not have lost with the amount of talent that they had.
And
But
the other wrinkle that they had, which a lot of people don't realize, was his opt out, which was historic for the amount of money. If they had fired him, they
yeah,
would have owed him $33 million in an opt out.
which was absolutely insane, and they were able to avoid that obviously since he decided to leave on his own.
Or they helped him find the job because they didn't
Yeah.
want to pay it.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why he was never fired over the last few years. I think that them knowing that they would have had to eat all that money was so much more of a reason that they had to hold on to him. They basically, a few years ago, they basically gave him a lifetime contract, Calipari. That was pretty
Which,
much what Kentucky did. It
which
was like
is unheard of in
exactly,
college sports.
exactly, which is crazy. But they practically gave that to him, and so to get
He
out,
did earn it because they were the most consistent team in college basketball at one point. They made Final Fours almost every year. They just couldn't win the big one. That was the big issue they always had, because you always had Duke and North Carolina above them constantly.
Yeah, exactly. Like he took over in Kentucky in 2009. From like 2009 to like 2019 or so, I would say for like those 10 years, they were on top of college basketball like crazy. And then the last handful of years, they took a huge step down.
And I think Kentucky finally just said, all right, enough. Like, we can't go out first weekend. We're costing ourselves money here. Like, we're costing ourselves business. Like, our boosters are going to drop us if we don't make them any money. Like,
exactly.
So, I don't know. Yeah. But then there's a part 2 to this as well.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. Then the part 2 is Mark Pope getting the Kentucky job. So Mark Pope spent the last handful of seasons as a head coach. He was at Utah Valley from 2015 to 2019, and he was at BYU for the last 5 seasons before this, from 2019 to 2024. Did a fantastic job at BYU. He brought them from the WCC to the Big 12 this past year, moved them into a Power 6 conference. Mark Pope is also a Kentucky legend. He played at Kentucky from 1994 to 1996, won a national championship as the captain of the team in 1996 under Rick Pitino. And Rick Pitino spoke very, very highly of Mark Pope. They had the press conference, and Pitino already wants to strike a deal of St. John's versus Kentucky for the next several years in some non-conference games. But
big surprise.
Yeah, exactly. Big surprise there. And Pope was 187 and 108. His record at the 2 schools that he was at, and he made 2 March Madness appearances, but lost in the round of 64 in both of them. So he hasn't won a March Madness game yet.
I want to ask you one question though about a rumor I heard, which you probably know which one I'm going to bring up, but how much viability do you give to the Dan Hurley rumor? Was that ever a thing?
I personally don't think so. I don't think that there was any chance that Hurley was really going to leave. The problem though was they reportedly offered him a lot of money.
Well, the term they're using is Brinks truck. That's the term that was thrown out there.
He's making about $6 million, I think, at UConn. They offered him apparently 8 years, $100 million.
What?
That was the rumor. I don't know if that actually happened, but if that was the case, it's double the money that he's making at UConn. So that's very, very difficult to say no to. But he just won back-to-back national championships. UConn has been on a run over the last 20 years that they've by far been the best team in college basketball. Over the past 20 years, they've won 5 national championships. No one's even come close to that.
Talk about someone who recruits very well. Also on top of it in Hurley. I mean, exactly. I watched the post conference on the court, and I think I forgot who asked it, but someone said, "Oh, what do you make of the rumor?" And he's like, "We just defended our national title. Where am I going?" And I'm like, that was such a perfect answer.
Yep.
In my opinion, like one, you're not going to show your hand before the season is officially over, but I think part of it was, even though money is nice, do you want to deal with the University of Kentucky politicking? I don't think he didn't. I wouldn't.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. And I don't think that he was really a realistic candidate. I do think, though, Scott Drew was a realistic candidate. He's the head coach of Baylor. He's been there for the past like 25 years or so. Basically built up that program into a basketball powerhouse. They were a nothing program when he got there, and he did a fantastic job. Won the national championship a couple of years ago with Baylor. I think that it was realistic that they were going to land him, but his family wanted to stay in Texas. They didn't want
Makes
to
sense.
move.
Yeah.
And that was the deciding factor. But he had come out and said that Kentucky was his dream job. He would have loved to have taken it. So I think it was just kind of like a difficult situation. I do think Scott Drew was realistic. I don't think Billy Donovan was realistic either because
Who wants Billy Donovan right now?
and the difficult part is the Bulls are still playing. The Bulls are still he wouldn't be able to just get up and leave in the middle. I mean, they're playing the play-in tournament.
Yeah, but Billy Donovan's not a great coach, in my opinion. Whether I understand he had his run at what was it, University of Florida, I think was where he had his run, and like they made a lot of Final Fours. He was like the it coach, back then. But what was the other? Oh, I heard Nate Oates.
Nate Oates was another one too, and he basically re-upped that he wanted to stay at Alabama. That was another interesting one that I thought he would have been maybe a little bit more interested in. I'm not sure how much interest he actually had in it. But it's that I mean, all of those would have been their priority to get. I mean, those are all established head coaches, fantastic head coaches. But getting up and leaving too, especially for like Scott Drew, who's been at Baylor for 25 years, and Nate Oates, who's kind of like redeveloped the Alabama program since taking over, is tough to leave for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, and money only goes so far. Like these guys make enough money where 2, 3, 4 million is not going to change, making them uproot their family, uproot their lives. It's not going to and that's crazy considering because you and I, 2, 3, $4 million would seem like a lottery win.
Exactly.
To us.
Exactly.
But to them, now I don't know about Hurley because I don't know how long Hurley's been a head coach for.
Yeah.
Do you know how long he's been a head coach for?
He's been at UConn for 6 years.
So he has put his time in a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And before that, he was coach at Wagner. He was coach at URI before that. But this was his first big time job, and he's been there for like several years now.
So he earned his stripes the correct way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so then, all right, he basically defending his title. He could go wherever he wants or stay wherever he wants at this point. He basically earned, and that, by the way, people need to realize that winning one national championship is tough, but to go and defend your title right after it, and by the way, different recruiting classes coming in and out on the process on top of that, not easy.
Yeah. Nope, not easy at all. And it's extremely difficult to win even just one. I mean, you look at like Scott Drew, who's one of the best college basketball head coaches of all time. It took him 20 years just to win one, and he's only got one. And could be a decent chance that he retires with only one. And Mark Few, who's been at Gonzaga for 25 years, still hasn't won one at Gonzaga.
And his name comes up always too.
Yeah, he always comes up because people are always interested to see if he would go to a bigger program and decide to leave Gonzaga since he hasn't won. He's been there for so long, hasn't won a championship. But
I think the problem was Kentucky wanted to make a splash, and I think unfortunately everyone realized with Calipari walking out the door, there was definitely some kind of power struggle, and big name was not going to come in there because they knew they were going to power struggle the same way.
Yeah, I think it was for all the guys that turned down the job. I think it was a decent enough move. They brought in a Kentucky guy too, so it can give you a little bit of an alumni thing, and we'll see how he does. I mean, Kentucky's only had I think 6 head coaches in their history, so they're kind of like the Steelers of college basketball, pretty much.
You're right. Yeah,
they strike on almost every head coach that they bring in. So.
It's a good run though, because you really don't see that anymore with head coaches. Like head coaches now treat their jobs like the athletes, where if they're doing well, like if Dan Hurley wins on, let's say, and I don't think this is going to happen. By the way, we have two rarities in sports. I just thought about it. It's the possibility of 2 3-peats in professional sports.
That's true.
And you would know all too well about one of them.
Yep, exactly.
With the Chiefs. And now you have a 3-peat opportunity with UConn.
Yeah.
How often do we get to talk about 3-peats in professional sports happening at the same time? Well, one professional, one college, but just in sports in general.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's definitely going to be very interesting to see kind of like how that goes down this year and everything.
But it's the same thing. Like now these coaches are treated like athletes. All right, if I win 3 in a row, I should get double my salary. I should get a long-term extension. I should get power over the organization. That's what it's going to come down to, because Hurley has now become a powerhouse.
Yeah. So if they use it as everyone uses it as a stepping stone if they can get something bigger. I mean, nobody's going to turn down a bigger role, bigger job, even just to like stay at a specific school.
But the last thing I'll say on this though is, do you think Calipari actually took the smaller job? Like, because people are saying like, oh, well, he took the easy way out again, like leaving the Nets.
Yeah, well, I don't think that it was necessarily the easy way out, but it definitely is a smaller job, I would say, because Kentucky is a blue blood. It's one of the best programs in history, and Arkansas has had some good teams, but they're not necessarily like a basketball powerhouse by any means. They've been very good over the last couple of years because they had Eric Musselman, and he kind of like turned the program around a little bit, was able to bring in some 5-star recruits, and Calipari will definitely be able to do the same. But in program wise, it definitely is a step down for sure.
We'll see what happens. I mean, 5 years is enough to determine. Like you're not going to go to Arkansas for 2 years. That makes no sense. Like
exactly.
You have to have enough time to build a program.
Yeah, he's got nobody on his roster right now, so he's got to build something up. In order.
What does he have? One guy? If I was reading that correctly, he's one guy that's technically connected to the school going forward into next year. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah, and he's got to rebuild with his recruits, and he's got to rebuild on the transfer market.
Holy cow! We'll see what happens.
Absolutely crazy. So jumping over from that from college basketball, got a little bit of a head coaching search in the NBA. We'll definitely let Nick take the charge on this one, as his Nets are looking for their new head coach, as Jacques Vaughn was fired a couple months ago, and Kevin Ollie was their replacement to finish out the season. But Mike Budenholzer is the lead name to become their next head coach. The other 2 finalists for the job is Kings associate head coach Jordi Fernandez and Suns associate head coach Kevin Young. So they got 2 guys who have never had head coaching jobs before, and then they got an NBA champion in Budenholzer who could potentially get the job. And Budenholzer going to the Nets just seems like a really interesting, like a really kind of weird move to me, because I don't think that the Nets are really in any sort of position to compete over the next couple of years. So I think that this would be a really, really interesting move if he ended up taking the job.
I mean, I understand why Budenholzer has some type, because like he has some hype, because unfortunately he got ran out of town. My opinion to this, and I remember talking about it on our show when this happened, that unfortunately I think Giannis ran him out of town. Yeah. And people are saying, "But Nick, you don't know that." I'm like, come on, he's the biggest star on the team. Like they were a great team, and all of a sudden he was out. Yeah. Like, you can't tell me that Giannis didn't have a say over that.
Well, he absolutely got run out of town, and Adrian Griffin got run out of town after 40 games this year.
And they weren't a bad team. What were they, a 2 seed when he got ran out?
Yeah, they got worse under Doc Rivers.
By the way, hot take for the season, worst move of the whole entire season.
Yeah.
Yep. Doc Rivers being hired. Doc Rivers has proven that first of all, he can't win down the stretch whatsoever. His record gets worse. You hire a guy who can't win in the playoffs.
Yeah. It was a really weird move. That's the reason why the Sixers let him go after this season, was because he couldn't get them over the hump. And that was part of the reason why he left the Clippers as well. He wasn't able to get them over the hump. Basically, since the Celtics championship team, he hasn't been able to get. He's coached a bunch of superstar teams and hasn't been able to get them over the hump. So so taking on this Bucks job, I mean, I think it was a difficult situation for him and for him,
Both
um,
sides.
for both sides, exactly, for him to just step in halfway through a season where, try to get a feel for the team's chemistry and stuff like that. There's been something up with the Bucks all season long, though. Damian Lillard
Injuries.
did injuries, but Damian Lillard still hasn't seemed like he's fully there.
I
Like
don't think he ever wanted to go there, to be
no,
honest.
no, I don't think he did. And and I think it became pretty evident throughout the season. Like he had a good year, um, like he normally does, but there's something that's just isn't clicking with him and like the rest of the team, and it's not as explosive as you kind of thought it would be when they traded for him before the season.
Well, everyone thought that Dame and Giannis were going to be an instant hit, but that's
Yeah,
not how it always goes. Stars have to want to put the effort and the work and the chemistry, keyword by the way, chemistry,
yeah,
to really, excuse me, get stars, a duo to work together. Dame, and this was part of the problem why I'm not going to say he got ran out of Portland because he was not. He
no,
chose, I think he left respectfully, which is rare in today's game. Usually a star demands a trade, which by the end he did. And it was time. He had to go.
yeah,
But he's really a ball dominant, I hate to use this example, but LeBron James type
yeah,
all-star, where even though you put pieces around LeBron or Dame, it does not work. How many times has LeBron had all these stars around him and it just does not work?
yep. It's true, and there's a lot of he's one of those guys that's not easily molded into any team that he kind of joins and can kind of like adapt to their play type and stuff like that. Like he is a ball dominant player, and that's exactly how it goes. That's the same thing like you said perfectly with LeBron too. I mean, we've seen so many of the stars that they've gone out to get to team up with him that just hasn't worked out because he doesn't click with them. You know, there's some players who mold into a different type of player. Honestly, like you can like you can say whatever you want about James Harden, but what he kind of turned into this season after joining the Clippers was a perfect fit for them.
I got to give him credit because he actually they've played better and he's kind of adjusted to the role of being the assist guy.
Exactly. And he's not just chucking up threes the entire game. He knows his role. Westbrook knows his role too, but partially Westbrook knows his role because he's not that good anymore. But Harden like still had some talent and stuff. And honestly, I have to give him credit because he knew that in order to win a championship, he's going to have to team up with some of these guys, and he's got to take a back seat to Kawhi and Paul George because those are the two stars of the team.
And Paul George has been hurt quite a bit
Yeah.
this year,
Yep.
too, way more than people thought. He kind of became an injury-prone player.
Yeah.
Also, and forget Kawhi. Kawhi is a human wild card. You don't know when he's going to play, when he's not going to play. He came out and said, I don't care about the awards. So that tells you all you need to know about how many games he's going to put an effort into.
Exactly.
But to circle kind of a long way of circling back to this, Budenholzer, and the reason he got ran out of Milwaukee was because he wanted to play team basketball. That's what he was great at, putting Giannis in with all those guys. And I don't know why I always Chris Middleton. Yeah, finally, I remembered that name. Those two work well together, and I feel like Dame kind of disrupted that duo, partially because now Dame has to touch the ball more often.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
I feel like Budenholzer wants to play team ball, but that's just not what happened. The Nets, strangely enough, like you said, might not be a terrible fit. Is it an odd fit? Yes. But is it a terrible fit? No, because they play team basketball.
Exactly. And if there's going to be somebody that kind of gets them back on track and gets the most out of their talent, like this wouldn't be a bad hire. It really wouldn't be. I don't think that they're going to jump into being a competitive team immediately, like over the next couple of years. I think they still need to build up. They probably have to draft some guys. They got to try to trade some of the pieces that they have for draft picks and kind of go in that direction because the veteran core that they have together is never going to like win. It's just a bunch of like random veterans that I don't think really complement each other very well. I'm not a huge fan of it. Ben Simmons, you got 1 year left of his contract, and then he'll be gone. So thank God that's almost over with.
I need that headache done. It was such a bad trade. I
Yeah.
know why they did it originally because it got them out of the James Harden deal, ironically.
Yeah.
The best deal they probably made was trading Kevin Durant. And I can't believe I'm saying that
Yeah.
because they got way more back from the Suns than they probably should have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that was a fantastic trade for the Nets. And at that point, it was Kyrie was checked out, Harden was gone. And
But
you
I
had
don't blame Harden at that point, though. I think Kyrie
yeah,
was the one that was causing the most issues.
Kyrie 100% like caused the three of them to break up for sure. And once Kyrie was gone, you knew that you had to kind of get rid of KD.
Yeah, you had no
Even
choice because he came there with
yeah,
Kyrie.
even though they did put on the facade, like, okay, like we traded Kyrie, but we're still going to build around Kevin Durant. We want to keep Kevin Durant around.
Yeah, okay.
You knew when they were saying that they weren't going to actually go through with that, and he wasn't going to want to stay there either. Like,
Yeah, but
there was no way.
but Kevin Durant's a fraud. Like
Yeah.
I hate using that word, but like because everyone's gonna say, "Oh, well, he won championships." I had this discussion with someone the other day that, in my opinion, if I had a personal record book for Kevin Durant, I would say he won no titles.
Yeah.
And people are saying to me, "What are you talking about? He won rings." I'm like, in the terminology, he won rings. But who's the one that led the team for the Warriors? It was Steph Curry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, those teams that he jumps to, you could definitely make the argument that it was a very difficult way out. But jumping back into the Budenholzer thing, I think that it could be a decent move for the Nets. The other two guys I really don't know much about. It looks like they would just be kind of young guys to bring in to try to like head into a rebuilding direction. So
We're in a New York market, for crying out loud. Why are we
I know.
hiring assistants that have never had a head coaching job?
I know. That's why. Honestly, I think Budenholzer is probably going to end up getting the job. If he wants it, it probably will be his.
I don't hate it. I just think, like
Yeah.
it's weird.
It's very weird because he's an NBA champion. He's coached competitive teams his entire career, so he's going to be kind of like taking on a team that's in like a bit of a rebuild. So
Also, I don't think there'll be someone running him out of town like a Giannis
yeah,
on a roster. I mean,
Yeah,
I like Bridges. I like Cam Johnson. I like the guys they got from the Suns.
Yeah.
It's just now they got to really knit it together and get it somewhere.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And then jumping over from that, we got an interesting contract that was given out. So Grayson Allen signed a 4-year, $70 million extension today with the Phoenix Suns. This news kind of broke out like a little while ago. A very solid move. I think that he was part of one of the trades that they ended up making last year that brought back Bradley Beal in. I think it was the 3-team trade.
Was he on Washington?
He was on
Or was it Detroit? I think it was on Detroit.
Could
I think he was part of a 3-team deal with the Bradley Beal deal, and I think he was in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where he was, but either way, I'm pretty sure it was in the Bradley Beal deal. But he ended up having a very good season for them. He started the entire year for them, and was able to complement Kevin Durant and the rest of the team very nicely, especially while Bradley Beal was out. So, very well-deserved contract, I think. I mean, 4 years, $70 million. A lot of people are going to think that, like 17, 18 a year is going to be way too much for Grayson Allen, but that's kind of the state of the NBA at this point. Pretty solid extension. He was on Utah. That was it. Yeah. He's bounced around a little bit over the last few years. Yeah, he was on Utah. There was it was like a 3-team deal for the Bradley Beal trade that
I think Utah was kind of like that feeler third team to make the deal work.
And brought in traded like a veteran for some young pieces and draft picks.
But he's become a real leader for them, which is very odd because I'm sure you know what I'm about to say. People remember him more for what happened. What was it at Duke?
At Duke, yep.
Where he took out. Who did he take out? I don't remember. He fouled somebody hard, I think. Or
there was a couple of guys. He was known for tripping. That was like one of his big things.
He was a dirty player in
Yeah,
college.
he was. He was. He was a classic Duke player, and a lot of guys didn't like it. But he, for the most part, since he's joined the NBA, kind of cleared up his image a little bit. He hasn't been a very dirty player throughout his NBA career, and he's just been like a very solid player throughout his career. Good starter.
He picked up some range too, which I was kind of surprised.
Did a good 3-point shooter. He can drive. He's athletic. Plays some defense. He's turned into a very solid NBA player.
He kind of reminds me a little bit, even though he's a shooting guard. He kind of reminds me of a point forward, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I can see that. Like he's a combo guy. He's a slasher. Can do a bunch of different things.
He can play defense.
He can play defense, exactly. Like he's turned himself into a very, very solid player.
I mean, I'm happy for him because his reputation got tarnished big time.
Exactly. Like his reputation going into the NBA was how dirty of a player he was. He had a target on his back and everything. And
people were surprised he got drafted.
Yeah, there was not too many people that liked him besides Duke fans.
So he was the 21st pick overall in the first round, which I thought was high for him.
Yeah. And he spent 4 years at Duke as well. I remember
that was before people really jumped out of college early after freshman year to get in the draft.
Yeah, he was like one of the rare 4-year guys. Ended up staying, but he ended up being a first round pick, and he's done well with the Suns. I definitely think that was a very solid fit. So jumping over from that, we'll jump right into the NBA playoff brackets. We have the NBA playoffs have been set. We have the play-in tournaments that begin tomorrow. The first matchup that we'll look at, obviously, with the play-in tournaments, we have the Western Conference. The number 1 seed is the Oklahoma City Thunder, so they'll be taking on the 8th seed, which we'll go over the scenarios about that in a few. And then the 2 seed is Denver Nuggets, and they'll play the winner of the Pelicans versus Lakers, which we'll go over in a little bit. But the 2 already determined series, we have the number 4 seeded Los Angeles Clippers versus the number 5 seeded Dallas Mavericks, and then the 3 seed Minnesota Timberwolves versus the 6 seed Phoenix Suns. So those are 2 very interesting matchups. Timberwolves spent a decent amount of time in the Western Conference as the 1 seed this year, and they ended up falling to 3. Come time at the end of the season, they ended up falling 1 game back. But they'll be taking on the Suns, who everybody thought was going to be a powerhouse this year. Bradley Beal barely played, but he should be healthy, and taking on a Timberwolves team that made the playoffs last year, and honestly is kind of a scary team in my opinion. But they're going to have to beat out some of these other teams, some of these veteran-led teams like the Clippers, like the Nuggets, the Lakers if they make it, the Warriors if they make it. So it's an interesting mix in the West.
I mean, for me, I think the 3-6 on both sides is the most entertaining for me.
Yeah.
I think that Milwaukee, who is dysfunctional, I think that's the best way to really describe them right now, against a Pacers team that had some injuries with Tyrese Halliburton, who came up and was a huge, huge star during the season. And if it wasn't for him getting hurt, he probably would have been in the MVP discussion at the end of the year.
Yep. No, absolutely. And he got hurt, and that definitely threw kind of like a wrench in their season. But the 3 versus 6 in the East, as we were saying, is the 3 seed Milwaukee Bucks versus the 6 seed Indiana Pacers. And some other news that is interesting is that Giannis could miss time in the first round.
Not surprised. I mean, he's been kind of in and out of the lineup the past couple weeks. I was reading a Shams Charania report that he's almost leaning towards doubtful for, and if that's the case, I don't think Milwaukee can win.
Nope. I think it's very wide open. I think even if Giannis plays, I think it's a very wide open series.
He's not going to be 100%.
I've liked what I've seen from the Pacers this year. Halliburton hasn't had the greatest second half, and he's been a little bit hurt, but they have a good overall team. They got a few good scorers.
Miles Turner,
who's been fantastic in the paint all season long, and I like them being able to pick off the Bucks. Just like we were saying earlier in the show, there's something up with the Bucks. They just haven't been that same team that we thought that they were going to be. Lillard just hasn't seemed into it. Giannis could potentially miss this entire series. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving pieces that can lead to the Pacers possibly picking off the Bucks in this series, even if Giannis ends up coming back and playing. I think that this is out of I think Cleveland versus Orlando could be very close, but this might be the closest series out of the four that have been already determined.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, looking at both sides of the 3-6, I think Timberwolves Suns is also fascinating in a lot of ways. I think the Timberwolves could have been a 1 seed if they just played a little better down the stretch.
Yeah.
The Suns, I think the Suns have a lot of pressure because everyone with the big three, obviously they thought that they were going to run away with the 1 seed. Everyone thought they were going to run away with the 1 seed, and it was not even going to be close.
Yep.
Which that didn't end up happening. There was injuries. Durant got hurt again. Beal was in and out of the lineup. I don't know. The Suns kind of scare me a little, even though I think they could win that series. I don't know if Cat is healthy. I think he's healthy. I think he's finally back in the lineup. Again, same thing for Cat. If he's out, they don't win. There's no way. They can't win. They need him in the worst way.
Absolutely. I think that this year is going to be very interesting, and I completely agree with you that the pressure's on the Suns because, I mean, if it wasn't for a end of season push, the Suns would have been a play-in team. They were sitting in the 7-8 spot for a while, and they somehow were able to sneak into the 6, and they kicked the Pelicans into the play-in. The Pelicans were sitting at 5 and 6 for most of the season, and they ended up getting kicked out. But the Suns were able to make a push to narrowly miss the play-in tournament. And the Timberwolves have been dominant all year long. Rudy Gobert has had a fantastic year. He's probably going to win his 4th Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's the favorite to win it. Him and Wembanyama are really the only 2 candidates to win it, but Vegas thinks that it's going to be Gobert. So
that makes sense because he's been in the league longer. I think
got to take
more people can trust.
Also, got to take Vegas's word for it because they always know what's going on. They always have a good look.
Just kind of looking around the rest of the matchups. So obviously on the play-ins, what do you have? You have the Kings and the Warriors. My gut, and this is going to sound odd, my gut tells me the Warriors will win that.
Yeah.
I just think because the veteran experience will show. I don't know if Sacramento is ready to and actually wasn't this the matchup last year, if I'm not mistaken?
I believe so. Yeah, and Sacramento went on a little bit of a run and was able to win a playoff series after being, I believe, a play-in team. Or I think
it was a 7-game series. That's when Steph Curry in Game 7 broke a record for 50-plus points.
Yeah. Yep, and Sacramento was able to knock off Golden State last year.
So that was an insane series. So that might actually not be a bad game.
No,
but
that could be a very good game. That's a rematch of that, and obviously they're both in the same division too, both California teams. That could be a decent rivalry. So obviously, besides the playoff bracket, we have the play-in tournament games. So just like we were saying, the Golden State Warriors at the Sacramento Kings is the 9 versus 10 game, which will take place Tuesday night at 10 o'clock. Before that will be the 8 versus 7, the 8 seed Los Angeles Lakers at the 7 seed New Orleans Pelicans. Tuesday at 7:30. The winner of that game plays the Denver Nuggets, as will be the 7 seed and play the Nuggets as the 2 seed. Loser of that game will play the winner of Warriors versus Kings to see who gets the 8 seed to play the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Lakers versus Pelicans game, I think, is going to be interesting. Anthony Davis will be playing, but he's been a little bit banged up towards the end of the season.
They said he's not going to miss it.
Yeah, he's not going to miss it. But he played a shocking 76 games this year, which was the most of his career. Anthony
also,
Davis.
The minutes load has been up quite a bit, which I was kind of I saw like he's averaging like 35, 37 minutes now in games, which is I was shocked when I read that stat.
It's honestly incredible how healthy he's been able to stay this year.
Especially with LeBron being out.
Yeah, exactly. And LeBron being out. And they've needed it because there's a bunch of guys on the Lakers who have missed a lot of time. Gabe Vincent was out for almost the entire season. Jared Vanderbilt was out for a while. And I think D'Angelo Russell missed a bunch of time too. So,
dare I say the Lakers would have been screwed if they didn't have Anthony Davis in those games? They would have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah, Anthony Davis is, I'll get as much heat and stuff from all the LeBron fans and stuff, but Anthony Davis has been the heart of that team over the last few years.
I agree with you, 100%.
I completely. That's what I've always thought since they won their championship in 2020. I thought he was the best player on that team as well. And whenever he goes down is when the team takes a big dip.
Laker fans are going to hate me, but I don't even count that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because we won. No, you didn't win anything.
Playing in an empty ballroom at Disney World.
Yes, because that counts as a real title.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to look at that matchup, I think Anthony Davis has even more incentive, if you know what I mean, because he's playing his former team in the play-in game. And something tells me that, and this is going to sound bad, but do you think the NBA is really going to allow the Lakers to lose in the play-in game?
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is also an interesting game, though, in a lot of ways, because the winner of this game plays the Denver Nuggets, who are the 2 seed. The loser of this game will play the winner of Warriors versus Kings to see who plays the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I know where you're going with this.
As the 1 seed. And so because of that, Mike Greenberg said some interesting stuff on Get Up this morning about how the Lakers should practically blow this game in order to avoid a rematch against the Nuggets in the first round. He thinks their best bet is to lose this game, play against the winner of Warriors Kings, try to win that game, and then you play the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round.
Well, let's listen to Greenberg explain it, because you and I were trying to make heads or tails of this before, and you and I were just stunned. So take a listen to Greenberg on Get Up.
I'm going to say something in duck, because I know that it is controversial, and I know that it flies in the face of absolutely everything that the spirit of competition was born to create. And you just said, Herman Edwards, you play to win the game. The Lakers should not play tomorrow night. They should not play LeBron. They should not play AD. They do not want to be the 7 seed. You want to be the 8. I'm taking my chances in a one and done at home against either Sacramento or Golden State and go in against the very young OKC Thunder in round 1 instead of going into the buzzsaw that is Denver. I think it is worth the risk. But I think life is about assessing risk, reward. Is it worth that risk to avoid playing Denver in round 1 or 2? There's no one who can. Look, the Nuggets are the one team the Lakers have no chance to beat. Realistically, no chance to beat. And you know who knows that? LeBron James knows that. They got swept by the Nuggets last year. That is a matchup they are hoping someone else knocks off Denver along the way. To me, Allen, I understand the risk. And if you wind up losing at home Friday night to Sacramento or Golden State, you wind up looking terrible. But I think it is a risk worth taking.
Just such a bad take, in my opinion.
A horrible take. So basically, if I understand this correctly, he's saying, you know what? We're just going to throw away the game against the Pelicans, and we'll take our chances.
Basically, risk losing and not even making the playoffs just so you can avoid the Nuggets in the first round, which in order to make it to the NBA Finals, the Lakers will have to meet the Nuggets anyway, some way or another.
You're gonna lose one way or the other. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly. And the whole idea of tanking a game in order to get a better first round matchup in the playoffs, I think is just so ridiculous. We heard this yesterday with the Knicks. The Knicks beat the Bulls in their season finale and were able to get the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. And then people came out and said that they should have purposely lost that game so they could get the 3 seed and play against Indiana in the first round, rather than getting the 2 seed and playing against the winner of Miami versus Philadelphia for the 7 play-in.
This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You play to win. I'm stealing from what Greenberg said, but Herm Edwards, hello, you play to win the games. That's what we do as athletes, or they do as athletes. You're out there to win, not to throw games away. This is not, they're talking about tanking a playoff game the same way you would tank games to get a better draft pick.
And he also, the funny thing that I thought too is that he suggested that they bench their players. They don't play LeBron and they don't play Anthony Davis. First of all, they imagine that the kind of fine they would get from the league if by doing something like that, and the kind of reaction that NBA fans would have about that, basically just throwing in the towel, purposely.
What about the amount of money those playoff tickets cost going to the game? Or better yet, which TV network is doing the Western Conference? I think it's TNT.
Yes, TNT.
Can you imagine TNT going to the NBA and say, why is LeBron and AD sitting?
It would be crazy.
It'd be a ratings disaster.
The entire concept is just downright ridiculous. Like,
who throws games, though? You don't see this happening back in the 90s. I love how they compare like LeBron and everybody to the 90s. In the 90s, they didn't throw games.
No. And you played whoever you played in the first round and nobody cared. Like, if you had a tough matchup in the first round, okay, in order to win an NBA championship, you have to be able to beat those kind of teams too. You don't deserve to be NBA champions if the Lakers truly are that afraid of the Denver Nuggets, then they don't deserve to be NBA champions or even make it to Western Conference Finals. If they're that afraid of the Nuggets that they would blow a game on purpose to avoid them in the first round, they don't deserve that.
What about fatigue? So you're just going to give up one game and then you're going to force – because, okay, so LeBron and AD don't play, big deal. But what about the rest of your team? Now they got to play a second game.
And also, to be completely honest with you, if the Lakers were to blow that game and Golden State beat Sacramento, Golden State probably destroys the Lakers to become the 8th seed.
I would take playoff Steph over most of the Lakers team.
Absolutely. I completely understand that the Warriors haven't been that great this year. They've been extremely inconsistent, but in a win or go home game in the playoffs, Steph versus LeBron, I'm taking Steph. Anytime.
I mean, to be honest, like the way I look at the bracket for the Warriors and all that stuff, if Clay could somehow get on a hot streak in the playoffs, they would be an even more dangerous team.
They would.
In the playoffs.
They absolutely would. And I think that, their only route to the playoffs is being an 8th seed. But if Golden State ends up beating Sacramento and then beating the loser of Lakers versus Pelicans, that's going to be an interesting matchup, Thunder versus Warriors, as a 1 versus 8 in the first round.
By the way, and this is I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think OKC is beatable at the 1 seed.
They're absolutely beatable. I think that it's difficult because you look at OKC and you look at Minnesota, are two very young teams that don't have much playoff experience. I think Minnesota is much more of a threat than OKC is. I think OKC, all these guys are really like for the first time playing in their first ever big playoff games. OKC is definitely very beatable, and I think everybody in the Western Conference knows that too.
But one thing that does frustrate me with a lot of the NBA analysts is they're saying, well, it's not OKC's time to win. How do you know that?
Exactly.
How do you know that? Okay, they're a young team. We've seen young teams win before.
Yeah. And there's not one team in the league besides maybe the Celtics that you look at and you're like, yeah, they're definitely winning the NBA the championship this year. There could be a lot of different scenarios. Like you could make an argument for a bunch of different teams. I think, except for possibly the Celtics, it does seem like it's probably their year, but they haven't been able to get over the hump when it comes to playoff time. So that's why it's difficult for me. And I also hate the Celtics too, so I'm never going to give them benefit of the doubt.
But you just said the same thing that I was going to say, that I don't know if I still trust the Celtics to make it all the way to the end, because Jason Tatum will brick like the NBA Finals like he did against the Warriors, and that's why they lost.
And big games, Jaylen Brown never shows up too. He's known to drop 45 points and then drop 8 points the next game when it comes to the NBA Finals. So you never know what Jaylen Brown you're going to get when it comes playoff time. Tatum has missed some big shots. Porzingis had a good season, but Porzingis also hasn't really played too many big time games. I mean, he was with the Knicks when they were making the playoffs. He was with the Mavericks when they really weren't doing much. He was with the Wizards the last couple of years and they were terrible. So he hasn't really played in big time games either.
I just want to alert people, because people make a big deal about this. Highest paid player in the league, Jaylen Brown. Yep. I think it's $62 million a year. And it's like 5 years, $60 million a year, which, by the way, is absurd in every way, shape, or form. He's not even the best player in the league.
No. He's not even the best player on his own team.
Well, I don't know. I feel like at times he can be, Like
At times he could be. I would still take Tatum over.
Oh yeah,
over
I
him.
would probably still take Tatum, but I don't know. He kind of concerns me because he doesn't come up clutch in the moments when the Celtics need it.
It's true. I completely agree with you. I think that that's why I think that the Celtics, like, you can't. I know they were 64-18 this year, which was an absolutely absurd record.
They clinched a playoff berth like 2 months out.
They finished. The Knicks finished in second place, and they were 14 games behind the Celtics. Like, that's how far ahead of the rest of the league the Celtics were this season.
But the problem is they're a regular season dominating team.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
And to be fair, or I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because obviously they're going to be playing the 8th seed. The Bulls-Hawks game is probably the worst game in the history of the playoffs right now. Like, it's a throwaway play-in game. No, the Bulls or the Hawks are going nowhere. Trae Young was hurt for the last 4 to 6 weeks of the year.
Yeah, that's by far the worst game of the play-in tournament. Whoever wins that game is losing to the Heat or Sixers. Whoever loses their game, like, that's not even going to be a close game. That probably will end up being blowout. There's both the Sixers and, in my opinion, I think the Sixers and the Heat are going to be the 7 and 8 seeds. I'm not sure who's going to be which. But both the Hawks and Bulls have just been so inconsistent this year. And especially the Hawks. The Hawks have like everybody out too. Trae Young's done for the year. They have several guys that.
Well, he came back right towards the very end.
Yes. Who am I thinking of that's done for the year?
Bay, right? I think
Sadiq Bey, but I think DeAndre Hunter too.
They had massive injuries, like at the beginning of the season. They had massive injuries.
Exactly. My point being, they have a ton of injuries, and they haven't been great at all this year. And the Bulls are the same way. I mean, the Bulls are healthy, but they don't have a great team. I mean, they're also not very healthy. Zach LaVine, I mean, has been gone for like half the season.
Well, and he's also disgruntled at the same time. I mean,
exactly. So they've had to rely on DeRozan to carry their entire team the entire year.
I mean, this is going to sound awful, but like LaVine, kind of not comparing them offensively, but he's turned into Ben Simmons a little bit off the court.
Yeah, just being like disgruntled and barely playing. In those senses, I know what you mean.
And I don't like imagine if him and DeRozan actually were playing on the court together. That might be dangerous. But
I know.
The other one, and I guess if we're going to talk some upset potentials, I like Dallas over the Clippers.
Yeah. Dallas against the Clippers is going to be a good series. Those are both teams that Dallas made it to the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago, and then they were terrible last year. So they have like varying years. And the Clippers always have a stacked roster on paper, but they're never able to get the job done. So I think that's going to be a very interesting series.
Hottest duo in the NBA, in my opinion, right now. Kyrie and Luka.
Oh, absolutely. They're the best scoring duo in the league for sure.
If they can keep this up somehow, I'm going to say it now. I think they beat the Clippers. Yeah. I think they're going to beat the Clippers because I just think the Clippers are going to fall apart like they normally do in the playoffs. So what would be their potential matchup? It would be the 1-8.
It would be the 1-8. And honestly, whoever wins the Clippers-Mavericks series probably makes it to the Western Conference Finals because either one of those teams probably beats either OKC or the 8th seed, whoever that ends up being.
The problem is, like I said, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Misconception 1 seed because like OKC's going to be a great team for years to come. I just don't think they're the dominant 1 seed.
Yeah, they're not ready yet. This has like all the makings of being like they had a fantastic regular season. More to come. Mark Dagnall just won Coach of the Year. He did a fantastic job. But like there's it's definitely like going to be like a couple of years before they're like actual title contenders.
And I like SGA, by the way. He's going to be a dominant player for many years to come. I don't know because he had some injury issues. Does he qualify for the awards?
It's a good question. I think he does. I think he's projected to be second place. I think Jokic they think is going to win the MVP again. But they have. I saw a lot of people thinking that Shai ends up in second place, or he ends up winning it.
So listen to these numbers. He's averaging 30 points a game, which is unheard of in today's NBA. Almost 6 rebounds, 6 assists. He's got a good line. He's winning them games.
Oh, absolutely. He's become a stud. He's a top 10 player, arguably top 5 player in the NBA.
Didn't he have like a 30-point streak going on at one point during the season?
He did. I think he had the most 30-point games in a row.
And it was like double digits at one point, I think.
Yeah, there was something like that.
But he's definitely got to get some MVP consideration. This guy is carrying this load of a team, and they have some really good players. I mean, unfortunately, they had that incident early on in the season with Giddey, and that kind of derailed them a little bit attention-wise, but they've been good otherwise. And actually, he's come back and played halfway decent, too.
Exactly. And they got Jalen Williams, who's turned into a very good player. And Chet Holmgren had a great rookie year. They got a bunch of good, interesting pieces.
He's a big man, too, right? He's like a 7+ footer.
He is. Yeah, he's a big dude.
And he's a range shooter, which is you're seeing that much more common in today's, like the Wembys of the world who can shoot threes. Chet can shoot threes. I'm trying to think who else. Kristaps Porzingis, who's I think 7'5", and he was shooting threes from the logo.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, nowadays, you have to be able to shoot, even the big men.
Right. So, what were the other matchups? There was. You were talking about Cleveland and Orlando, which I think is much more interesting than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I think Cleveland Orlando is going to be an interesting series. I mean, Cleveland kind of had a very tough second half of the year, and Orlando has just been consistent all year. Paolo Banchero has become an all-star. They have a bunch of good pieces around him. I think that's a series that could go either way. I think that both that and the Bucks versus Pacers are 2 ones that that could be easy game 7s. Could be pushed to a game 7.
You just have to hope that Paolo doesn't disappear, because he does have a tendency to go cold for a long stretch of time, and he's really their star.
Yeah, and Orlando too. This is the first time all these guys are playing the playoffs as well. Cleveland has been in over the last several years, and they're led by Donovan Mitchell, who has had plenty of experience throughout the playoffs in his career. Even with Utah. So the Cavs definitely have the playoff experience on their side. Orlando just has the young star power and the depth on their side.
I also like Franz Wagner. Also, he really came into his own shooting range wise.
Yeah.
And if Paolo and Franz can put that star power combo together, they'll give Cleveland a run for their money.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's why I think it could be a good series. I think that if Cleveland has the opportunity to come out and dominate because of their experience, but if Orlando is just playing their game, settle down, and just playing good basketball that won them all these games this year, I think they can make it a big series. And even if they don't win it, I think they could bring them to 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, I agree. I just hope Donovan doesn't shrink in the moment. That's what I'm hoping. He's had such a great year too. Mm-hmm. He really came through and kind of silenced a ton of people. Because people say, "Oh, well, he got his trade," and now there's rumors that he could end up in New York still. Because I think he's a free agent coming up, right?
He's going to be free agent after next year.
Oh, is it after next year? Okay,
yeah, he's got 1 year left.
But he's really come into his own. And he put that team on his back, quite literally, putting up 35, 40 points a game. And if it wasn't for him, they probably wouldn't be anywhere to be found at this moment in time.
No, he's definitely carried them greatly. And he's done a great job.
Let's talk about your team, because I'm sure you're chomping at the bit at the Knicks.
Yep. Well, I think, again, like I said before, I'm glad they won that game in the season finale on Sunday. I'm glad we ended up getting the 2 seed.
home field or home court.
Exactly. Mainly because, sure, like if we end up playing the Sixers, the Pacers would have been an easier matchup now that the Sixers are fully healthy with Embiid back. But being the 2 seed is better. First of all, if you want to win an NBA championship, you got to be able to beat the teams that you have to play against. That's my opinion. And if you can't beat those teams, then you don't deserve to make it far. So I don't care who they have to play in the first round. If they're going to be the best team, if they're good enough to make it all the way to the NBA Finals, they should be able to beat those teams. But sure, the Pacers would have been nice to be in the first round, but then say the Bucks ended up being the 2 seed and you meet the Bucks in the second round. Bucks now have home court advantage because they were the 2 seed and you're the 3 seed. So you tank that game to get an easier first round matchup to make it to the second round, but now you don't have home court advantage, and home court advantage is going to be key, especially at Madison Square Garden. This team, I mean, over the past 20 years and stuff, with all these terrible Knicks teams we've seen so many Knicks teams that are terrible home teams, just can't win at the Garden.
It's true.
The amount of terrible records that the Knicks have finished with in home games over the last several years, because everybody brings their A game when it comes to the Garden. This team right now just is perfect for Madison Square Garden. They build off the energy. They're true gritty players that the fans adore, and they adore the fans too. I think that it's fantastic, and I think that's going to play into and be a huge positive when it comes to the Knicks in the playoffs.
I mean, there's one player and one player only they're going to have to ride the energy through if they're to keep them going. Is Jalen Brunson. I mean,
absolutely.
This guy, even through all the injuries, because he looked beat up in the Bulls game, by the way, and he plays and he plays and he plays through his injuries. By the way, I know he was a decent defender and he could pass the ball. He's probably one of the best passers in the NBA.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
I never imagined him as a 30, 40-point scorer. That threw me for a loop. And now he's the reason why they're winning games, because he can go for 30 and 10 when needed.
Exactly. And I think that, that's the reason why the Knicks are as good as they are, is because they struck gold with Jalen Brunson. They knew what they saw in Dallas from the glimpses of playing time that he got. I don't think anybody expected him to become this good, but he's a hard worker, and he became a 28-point per game scorer. And we don't have Julius Randle. Randle's going to be out for the rest of the playoffs, rest of the season.
I think that hurts badly.
I think it definitely hurts, and probably will get us eliminated earlier than we were hoping. But to be honest with you, OG Anunoby is back, and Anunoby arguably is an even more important piece than Randle is to this team. If Brunson is scoring the way that he's scoring, you don't need Randle to do all his ISO stuff. And Anunoby hitting his corner threes and playing suffocating defense is perfect. I think that honestly, if Anunoby being out and Randle being in would be a bigger issue for them than Randle being out, especially with how well Brunson's been scoring.
By the way, and you were talking about which team would be the better matchup out of that play-in game between the Sixers and the Heat.
Yeah,
I want the Sixers. I know that's crazy, but Joel Embiid is not 100%. And he hurt himself the other day again.
Yep.
So he's not healthy 100%. I know that having Joel Embiid is better than not, but I'd rather deal with a hobbling Joel Embiid than a healthy Joel Embiid.
To be honest with you, in Wednesday's game, I don't know who I'm rooting for, because I don't know if I want to play the Heat or if I want to play the Sixers, because both teams have their positives and negatives.
Well, we'll be there watching it.
Exactly, we'll be there watching it. But I think if the Knicks are playing their game, even without Julius Randle, I truly think that they can beat the Sixers or the Heat in the first round by far.
I feel like Miami is a mystery box And the reason I say that is because, for the most part, you're going to get a dominant Miami team with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, which, by the way, I think no one talks about Bam Adebayo enough. Like, Bam Adebayo has become one of the better big men in all of the NBA.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the best rebounding big men in the NBA.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, he's someone that not too many people talk about. He was an all-star again this year when he was the only all-star with the Heat, too. Jimmy Butler didn't even make it.
And you know what? He probably likes the underdog attitude because it allows him to show that he's a much better player than he's given credit for. Now, the reason I say mystery box is because if Jimmy Butler got up on the wrong side of the bed before the game or is having a bad hair day, if most people will get that reference.
Yeah.
Or just decided my mental state is not with it, then they're going to lose.
Yep.
They're going to lose.
Exactly. And a lot of people think towards the end of the season that's kind of what Jimmy Butler has seemed like. Is that he's just kind of not with it. He doesn't seem like 100% for whatever reason.
Right. So here's what I'll say. If they get the Sixers, I think the Knicks will gut it out and win.
Yeah.
I think, which means they would be in the conference finals? I mean, yeah.
In the
semifinals.
Yeah.
Semis. I think it's all up for grabs at that point once they get to the semis, because anything could happen in the semis. But if they get the Sixers, I think they will gut it out and win somehow.
I completely agree. I think that is definitely true.
What were the other series that were left? Oh, Denver. But I think that's a shoo-in. It doesn't matter who they play.
Yeah. The rest of the ones and twos, I think are
Celtics will dominate. Denver will dominate. OKC is the one question mark. Really,
exactly. OKC is the one question mark, and like we were saying earlier, if they end up pulling like the Lakers or the Warriors, even the Kings too. Like they're in a tough position where they could easily get upset by any of those teams that could end up getting the 8 seed.
Like I said, the 3-6s are the ones to watch.
Yep.
The Pacers could definitely win, and I think the Suns could win in an upset. But I don't know if that's really an upset, the Suns beating the Timberwolves.
No, definitely not. I don't think it's an upset in record-wise this season, but it's not really an upset.
But yeah,
it's not really an upset.
The Pacers would be an upset over
Pacers
the Bucks.
Would definitely be an upset, yep. Bucks are a better team than the Pacers. There's no doubt about that.
If Giannis is doubtful, though, maybe it's not an upset.
Yeah.
Though.
Yep,
but that's a question mark.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So those matchups are going to be the interesting ones to watch. Obviously, we have the play-in tournament, and we're going to be going live via Playback to be checking out all 4 games the next 2 days. So
you and I are going to be very busy.
We'll be very busy, exactly. So Lakers, Pelicans, and Warriors, Kings tomorrow night, and then we got Tuesday night, I should say. And then we got Heat, Sixers, and Hawks versus Bulls on Wednesday night. So definitely going to be plenty of NBA matchups, and then we'll have our full 1 through 8 brackets ready for the first round.
Yeah, and we'll bring you a schedule because we plan on doing a lot of playback through the whole tournament. I did get some votes already to do the Knicks series, so that will probably be on the table.
Yep.
And then I'm sure with Ben we'll have the Celtics and all that stuff. So actually, it's probably good because those teams are probably going to dominate through the first couple of rounds.
Exactly.
So, but I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it too. We're going to have a very interesting playoffs come these next couple of weeks. So that'll do it for another episode of the 3&D. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench podcast network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the social at the 3&D ETB. We'll be putting out content all week in case you missed the entire episode. If you want to go back and watch that, once again, remember to tune into our live playback streams that will be going on Tuesday night for both of the playing games and Wednesday night for both of those playing games. And we'll have more information for you guys about the round 1 games that we will be covering as well once we know that bracket. So we'll be putting out all that content. So make sure you hit notifications and like and subscribe to Empty the Bench. and 3 in DETB. Hope everyone has a great night. And from Paul Lombardi and Nick Morgeson, bid you farewell, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.